The moment he wired the money, everything still felt calm, professional, and strangely inevitable, as if this was exactly how life was supposed to move forward, and that quiet certainty was the first thing the scam took from him. It began with a real estate listing that didn't look desperate or exaggerated, just a clean photograph of a modest single-family home in a quiet neighborhood in a mid-sized city somewhere in the southern United States, priced low enough to feel like an opportunity, but not so low that it raised alarms. To him, it looked like the kind of deal that happened when someone wanted efficiency rather than profit, and after years of renting, watching prices rise and waiting for the right moment, that listing felt like a signal that the waiting was finally over. The description was short, professional, and carefully written, using phrases like motivated seller, clean title, and move-in ready, with no dramatic language or artificial urgency. That normalcy created trust before a single word was exchanged. When he submitted an inquiry, a response arrived within hours from a man who introduced himself as a licensed real estate consultant working with an investment group that handled lightly marketed properties. The tone was confident without being aggressive, knowledgeable without sounding rehearsed, and that balance made the interaction feel less like a sales pitch and more like a conversation between professionals. During their early conversations, the consultant explained that the property belonged to an investor reallocating capital into another project, and that the seller preferred a clean transaction without open houses or drawn-out negotiations. He emphasized that owner-occupants were being prioritized over speculative buyers, a detail that felt ethical and reassuring. The buyer shared that he was pre-approved and looking for a primary residence, and the consultant responded as if that made him an ideal candidate. Every exchange reinforced the same message. This was a straightforward deal between reasonable people. Over the next several days, emails and phone calls continued at a steady pace. Documents arrived in polished PDF files that included a purchase agreement, preliminary title information, and identification for the entity that supposedly owned the home. Everything looked legitimate, pulled from public records and formatted professionally. There was nothing sloppy or rushed about the process. Questions were answered clearly, concerns were acknowledged patiently, and no one pushed him to move faster than he already wanted to. When the buyer asked about seeing the property, the consultant arranged a private showing, explaining that the home was vacant and access was handled through a lockbox. A code was sent the morning of the visit with instructions to take time and inspect everything carefully. When the buyer arrived at the house, it existed exactly as advertised. The exterior matched the listing photos, the neighborhood felt lived in and ordinary, and nothing about the scene suggested deception. Inside, the house was empty but clean, utilities were on, and every room aligned with the online description. The experience reinforced the belief that this was real, tangible, and safe. After the showing, the buyer confirmed his interest, and the consultant explained that the seller would be reviewing offers within 48 hours. He suggested submitting a strong earnest money deposit to demonstrate seriousness, emphasizing that the funds would be held in escrow and remain refundable during the inspection period. The language was careful, precise, and familiar to anyone who had ever researched a real estate transaction. Words like escrow, inspection, and contingency acted as anchors of legitimacy, quieting any remaining doubts. The offer was accepted the next day. The consultant congratulated him and introduced an escrow coordinator via email, a separate contact with her own professional signature, phone number, and branded letterhead. Wiring instructions arrived shortly afterward, clearly laid out and framed as a routine step in the process. The buyer hesitated briefly, aware that wiring money carried risk, but everything about the transaction suggested that this was standard procedure. The money was wired. For the first week after the transfer, the deal appeared to move forward normally. Confirmation emails arrived acknowledging receipt of funds, updates were sent about inspection scheduling and next steps. Communication continued, though responses began to slow slightly. Hours became a full day. Apologies followed, paired with explanations about processing delays and coordination issues. Nothing yet felt catastrophic, only mildly unsettling, like a machine that wasn't running quite as smoothly as expected. The turning point came when the buyer decided to drive by the property again, seeking reassurance. This time, a different for sale sign stood in the yard, branded by a local brokerage. At first, it seemed possible that the sign was old or overlooked, but curiosity turned into concern. He called the number listed on the sign and asked about the property. The agent on the other end paused before explaining that the house had just been listed and that no offers had been accepted yet. When the buyer mentioned his accepted offer, the agent calmly explained that such an offer did not exist and that the homeowner had not authorized anyone else to market or sell the property. In that moment, certainty collapsed. Calls to the consultant went straight to voicemail. Emails received no replies. Messages to the escrow coordinator bounced back as undeliverable. The structure that had felt solid only days earlier dissolved instantly. Over the following days, the full scope of the scam emerged. The property had previously appeared online, and scammers had copied photos, descriptions, and public records. Access to the home had been gained by posing as prospective buyers or agents, allowing victims to be shown a real, legitimate house. Documents were fabricated using accurate data layered with false entities. The escrow account was not real. The wired funds had been dispersed within hours, fragmented and moved beyond reach. Banks, law enforcement, and consumer protection agencies were contacted, but the outcome was the same each time. Wire transfers offered little recourse. The money was gone. Recovery was unlikely. The financial loss was devastating, but the psychological damage lingered longer. The buyer continued daily life while carrying the quiet weight of what had happened, replaying conversations, rereading emails, searching for the moment when awareness should have overridden hope. As time passed, it became clear that this was not an isolated incident. Similar scams had occurred in other cities and states, following the same structure with small variations. Vacant homes, rental properties, and inherited homes were common targets. The scams relied not on greed, but on trust, patience, and the assumption that professional systems protected honest participants. The house itself eventually sold to another buyer, someone unaware of what had unfolded before their purchase. To them, it was just a home. To the victim, it became a symbol of how easily reality could be constructed, how convincingly legitimacy could be imitated, and how quietly everything could disappear. The scam did not announce itself with threats or urgency. It unfolded politely, professionally, and patiently, waiting for the moment when caution softened just enough for hope to take control. By the time the truth revealed itself, the damage was already complete, leaving behind a lesson that extended far beyond real estate. The most dangerous scams no longer look like scams at all.